There is a particular magic that surrounds Las Fierbinți, that unassuming Romanian village where comedy and tragedy often share the same wooden bench under the sun. In Doctorul Dorel, partea when, the show captures something both ridiculous and profoundly human. The idea that in small towns, even the smallest pretense of authority can become an entire mythology. Dorel, the well-meaning but perpetually confused village mechanic, suddenly reinvents himself as a doctor, and the entire community responds not with skepticism, but with a kind of delighted belief. This episode, in its absurdity, is not just a humorous story about mistaken roles. It is a commentary on human gullibility, the thirst for recognition, and the fragile boundaries between competence and confidence. The first scenes of Doctorul Dorel, partea one, unfold with deceptive simplicity. Dorel, disheveled and greasy from a long morning fixing engines, overhears a conversation at the bar between Bobița and Gianni about how much respect doctors receive in the city. The laughter that follows Dorel's naive remark, "I could be a doctor if I wanted to," sets the tone for everything that follows. It is not just a joke about delusion. It is a mirror to the way people in isolated places create dreams out of mockery. The audience knows from the start that this will not end well. Yet they cannot look away. The cinematography emphasizes the dusty air of the bar, the worn furniture, and the faint hum of a radio in the background. These textures create a kind of rustic intimacy that heightens the comedic tension. This is not just a stage for laughter, but a real environment where absurdity is a natural part of everyday life. When Dorel decides to transform into Doctorul Dorel, the camera follows him through the slow process of preparation, a montage that could easily belong in a mock-heroic film. He studies old magazines with anatomy drawings, steals a white coat from the village clinic's laundry line, and practices his serious face in front of a cracked mirror. The brilliance of this sequence lies in its rhythm. The music, a comically solemn tune, contrasts with the awkward movements of Dorel as he tries to look intellectual. It is both endearing and tragic. He is not trying to deceive anyone out of malice. He simply wants to be seen, to be respected. In that longing, he becomes every small-town dreamer who has ever tried to wear a bigger identity than life allowed him. The real turning point of the episode comes when Dorel encounters his first patient, Firicel's goat. The animal refuses to eat, and Firicel, desperate, turns to Dorel with a mixture of trust and irony. The scene that follows is pure Las Fierbinți humor. Dorel, armed with a stethoscope he found in a box of junk, examines the goat with exaggerated seriousness. Every gesture is exaggerated, every pause perfectly timed. Yet beneath the laughter, there is something profoundly revealing about how people project faith into anyone who claims to know more than they do. Firicel, though he knows Dorel's limitations, still hopes for a miracle. It is the human condition distilled into a single, absurd encounter. We all prefer comforting illusions to cold truth. As the day goes on, Dorel's reputation grows. Word spreads across the village that he has cured Firicel's goat, and soon the entire community lines up outside his makeshift office, a shed with a faded sign reading Dr. Dorel, specialist in toate. The camera pans slowly across the faces of the villagers, each carrying their own small ailment or complaint. A toothache, a bad knee, a mysterious rash. The sequence is both comedic and deeply sociological. It shows how authority in small societies is not earned by qualification, but by rumor. Dorel, who only yesterday was mocked for being lazy, is now treated as a savior. It is a subtle critique of how quickly people abandon reason when comfort or hope is offered, no matter how ridiculous the source. The scene where Bobica and Celentano visit Dorel is one of the most finely crafted pieces of humor in the entire episode. They come under the pretense of being skeptics, teasing him for playing doctor, but as soon as Dorel starts talking in pseudo-medical jargon, their expressions change. Bobica, always torn between sarcasm and curiosity, begins to take notes. Celentano, half drunk and wide-eyed, insists that Dorel must have a gift. The brilliance of this moment lies in its absurd symmetry. The more nonsense Dorel speaks, the more the others believe him. The dialogue is quick, improvised, yet precise. It reminds the viewer of how easy it is for authority to be manufactured from confidence alone. Midway through the episode, Dorel's fantasy begins to crack. The arrival of an actual medical professional in the village, a young nurse sent from the county, forces reality to intrude upon the comedy. Their first meeting is awkward. Dorel greets her in a lab coat, 2 sizes too big, holding a thermometer like a scepter. The nurse, polite but incredulous, watches as the villagers whisper reverently around him. This confrontation between the fake and the real is handled with remarkable subtlety. Instead of immediately exposing Dorel, the nurse plays along, observing the dynamics of the village. The writers use this tension to explore a deeper question. What is more valuable, truth or belief? When ignorance brings comfort, is it still worth destroying? As night falls, Dorel sits alone outside his office, staring at the empty bottles of tonic he prescribed to various villagers, mostly mixtures of tea and alcohol. The humor softens into melancholy. The streetlight flickers, and for the first time he looks small, almost childlike. This is where the comedy transforms into something close to poetry. Dorel's transformation into a doctor was not an act of arrogance, but of longing. In his own way, he wanted to heal not bodies, but the invisible sadness that lingers in every corner of Fierbinți. That realization gives the episode a quiet, emotional resonance that lingers long after the laughter fades. The final scene is both absurd and beautiful. The nurse discovers that one of Dorel's patients, a man suffering from chronic pain, has genuinely improved, not because of any medical intervention, but because he believed he would. Placebo becomes redemption. The nurse, instead of exposing Dorel, simply thanks him and tells him to keep doing what he does best. The audience is left to interpret that ambiguous blessing. It is a moment that elevates the entire episode from comedy to parable. Sometimes belief itself is the medicine people need. In terms of direction, Doctorul Dorel, Parte Uai, stands out for its fluid pacing and subtle cinematographic contrasts. The daytime scenes are saturated with warm golden tones that evoke familiarity and community, while the night sequences carry a colder palette, hinting at the underlying loneliness of village life. The editing allows for long takes, letting the humor breathe naturally. Unlike slapstick or forced sitcom timing, the comedy here grows out of rhythm and silence. Every hesitation, every mispronounced word, every shared glance feels alive. It's not just about jokes. It's about human behavior observed with tenderness. When compared to other episodes of Las Fierbinți, this one feels both broader and more intimate. While many episodes rely on external conflicts or political satire, Doctorul Dorel focuses inward, dissecting the psychology of aspiration. It's reminiscent of Chaplin's The Great Dictator, where comedy and tragedy coexist in the same frame. Dorel's impersonation is funny because it's doomed, but it's moving because it comes from sincerity. The show's writers seem to understand that laughter and compassion often spring from the same source. Watching Dorel's story unfold, one can't help but think of similar archetypes in literature and cinema. The imposters who, through pretending, become something real. There's a faint echo of Don Quixote in Dorel's stubborn self-delusion, and perhaps a hint of Forrest Gump in his guileless heart. Yet, unlike those grand tales, Las Fierbinți keeps its scale small, its tone humble. The village is its universe, and within it Dorel is both hero and fool, savior and joke. This duality is what makes the episode so memorable. From a cultural perspective, Doctorul Dorel, partea ui, also reflects something deeply Romanian, the delicate balance between irony and hope. The villagers laugh at Dorel, yet they also protect him. Their mockery is affectionate, their belief pragmatic. This reflects a real social truth. In rural communities, survival often depends on imagination. The boundaries between truth and performance blur, and people find dignity in even the most ridiculous roles. Dorel, in that sense, becomes a symbol of resilience, of humanity's endless capacity to reinvent itself when life offers few alternatives. The closing credits roll over a shot of Dorel locking up his shed, still wearing his doctor's coat. He looks around as if expecting someone to call him back, then shrugs and walks away into the dimly lit street. The faint sound of laughter drifts through the air, perhaps his own, perhaps the village's. It is a haunting ending, not because it is tragic, but because it feels so real. The story of Dorel the doctor is, in the end, the story of everyone who ever wanted to be more than they are, even for a single day. Doctorul Dorel, partea I, is not just a comedy. It is a quiet study of identity, community, and the fragile art of pretending. Its humor conceals wisdom, its absurdity hides tenderness. In the hands of lesser writers, such a story might have been a cheap farce, but here it becomes a meditation on dignity and delusion. It reminds us that sometimes the line between fool and philosopher is drawn only by those who forget how to dream.